Hey everyone, my name is Monday. I like to joke around saying that I am a triple A manager by day, but like an indie dev at heart. So I'm currently the project lead for a project called Coven All Powerful, which is my indie game that I've been working on for about a year and some change now. It's a third person, fast paced arena brawler. But instead of fighting with like weapons, it's actually spellcasting. So you have a library of like magical characters that you play as. So yeah, that's kind of what I do, and that's like my heart and soul. But day to day, I actually work for Sony PlayStation. I'm a project manager there, mainly focused on like IT and infrastructure and kind of like a shared IT and technologies across studios. So I get to learn a lot game development and then apply that to how I want to make my games, whether it's like a weekend project or a game jam or something that I'm really passionate in my own time. And that's me.
Yeah, that is a very interesting, I guess, space to be in because people usually think of it as you either one or the other, sort of
Yeah.
thing. And I mean, you basically are literally right there. You kind of, in the space of PlayStation. So obviously that's the, forefront of gaming. And then obviously the independent, which we'll get to the Coven and stuff after that. But sort of talk a little bit about the day to day first, about PlayStation and how you even came into that and how that has cultivated itself, as far as how long you've been there.
Yeah. So I'm a big advocate, I guess, to preface all of it in apply for everything. Like let the employer tell you no instead of
Yeah.
thinking that you're not going to make it. Because my background is not games. Like I come from hospital operations management. I went to school for biology and chemistry. I was one of those weird guys that loved organic chemistry in college. So I was actually a professional chemist for 2 years and then got into hospital operations management and really got into game dev as a hobby, a stress relief. Like most people, I started watching YouTube videos and was
Mhm.
like making games following YouTube videos. And my wife, I was lucky enough to have the support of her. She was like, "Hey, you enjoy this. You should just why not apply for jobs? Like you have the job that you are good at and that you do enjoy, but why not take a chance?" And so I applied for a management job at Bungie and ended up getting that role. I was on the marathon team, so I know marathon has a lot of controversy going on.
Yeah.
I love that game. I'm so excited for the world to see like what Marathon the final vision is, and hopefully that alleviates some of the like production struggles that they went through. But worked on Bungie for about 2.5 years, and then was impacted by a round of layoffs that Bungie had. So took around 6 months to spin up my own studio with a friend of mine called Leap of Faith Studios because we weren't ready for that to be the end of our game dev journey.
Mhm.
And through doing that, I was still actively looking for roles and found this technical project management role inside of Sony that really aligned with what I had done before with like operations management, still leverage what I knew from working at Bungie and kind of what I knew from setting up my own studio and applied for it. And I've been working there coming on around like 9, 10 months or so. Like you said, it's been like a really unique opportunity to still have the heart and soul of an indie dev and like love making my own games and experimentation, but also being able to see how studios and how businesses structure game development to make it
Mhm.
so you're successful for years and years and you can take 4 or 5 years to make a game and still be okay because you
Yeah.
have like that player base that's going to come back to it just because it's a Naughty Dog game or it's a
Mhm.
Sucker Punch game. So yeah, I don't take for granted that I have a very unique scope of the overall game development landscape.
Thinking about it, I'm just like, because you get to kind of look at the lay of the land and sort of take the pros and cons of both.
Absolutely.
Usually, like, and obviously, you have your own game and stuff like that. As sort of technology increases, how do you see gaming and just in general, just the landscape of gaming? Like, what is just because obviously, like you
Mhm.
said, with the layoffs and stuff like that, things are kind of tumultuous on the builder side, the production side. But like, what do you think about gaming as a whole? Like, what is just your big picture thought of gaming right now?
I think gaming is in a unique space where we have been making games, AAA specifically has been making games with the same recipe for so long. And it's kind of like, when you have your favorite food, at first you start off and you're like, I can eat this every day. But then over a while, it starts getting a little bland and then you get bored and then you don't even want it anymore. And so right now we're in this space where people don't want the same lather, rinse, repeat that AAA has been giving us. And that's why we're seeing this surge of indie games that are more scrappy and can be more creative because there's lower risk. And I really see kind of like as we go into this, like, hey, the gaming industry doesn't look as good, indies are taking off. We're going to see a moment in time where between AI, which I know is a whole different conversation that people
Yeah.
are divided on, but between AI and creative freedoms and taking more risk, we're going to see more creative games surge. And I think we saw it, if you watch the Game Awards, there was a ton of new games that are being released that are new IPs. Like,
Mhm.
not a lot of games that were showcased at the Game Awards were like the next one in a series, or if they were, it was like the next one in like an indie series.
Right,
But
right, yep.
for the most part, it's new IP, and I think those new IP are gonna have to try to capture audience by trying new things and being more inventive. Like, we are not just gonna accept another hero shooter. We're not just gonna
Mhm.
accept
Yeah.
another base level extraction shooter. Like, you're gonna have to do more, and we see it currently. Arc Raiders is blowing people away with like their
Mhm.
extraction shooter recipe. Expedition 33 cleaned house at the Game
Yep.
Awards with like
It is.
revamping the JRPG genre, turn-based fighting. And so I think we're going to see a lot of crazy, unique games come out from studios that we're not going to expect to have that in them. And I think it's going to be very exciting, if we look at the next 4 or 5 years of the gaming industry.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of new IPs and new games, obviously you are on the forefront of that. So let's
Yeah.
talk about that. First, just how the idea came about for the game and, just talk about it and give us a sort of introduction to it.
Yeah. So my game, like I said, is Coven All Powerful. It's a spell casting based arena brawler. And funny enough, the idea for the game came from my desire to make a game that me and my daughter could play together and both
Okay.
have fun. So my daughter is 11. I've been trying to get her into games, and we end up in this weird area where the game is either so easy that I'm being a good dad and just playing it because it makes her happy, or it's too hard and I'm in the zone and I'm getting it. And then I look over at her and she's like dying and frustrated. And so I really wanted to challenge myself to make a game that was strategic enough that would keep me engaged, but still fast paced, button mashing, flashy to kind of keep her captivated. And then also, I really wanted to figure out a way to make the game that has a lot of community feedback. So one of the things that I'm really big on with making a game is not necessarily how fast can you make the game, but how fast can you get something playable to the community that you think is going to engage with the game. And so with those two things, I started like ideating around it, and really like my daughter had her chair right next to me at this desk, and I would be like, well, what if we made a fire character? And so we started looking at like Avatar: The Last Airbender and other fire like tropes with those characters and putting together what the spells would look like. And like she ultimately was the one that was like yay or nay for a lot of the
Yeah.
spells. So I joke around with people like if some of the spells feel like overpowered, it's because it's the mind of an 11-year-old and she wanted every character to be the
Yeah.
best. But I really, as I was working with her, I was like, okay, we have 9 months max before we can get this in front of players. Like, I don't want to invest a whole bunch of time before we have people playing this game and giving us feedback. And luckily, she has a great mind for like game design, which I'm slowly learning, and I was able to put stuff together. And so 3 months in, we had people playing prototypes of the characters and going against each other
Mm.
and getting a ton of feedback on like, this feels good, this feels bad. What if this character had this? And so we ended up with this game that has 13 characters. And I think at this point, we're up to 3 or 4 of them that straight came from the community saying it would be cool if this
Hmm.
thing happened or this character existed.
Cool.
Um, and yeah, it's been great.
I got to take a little time to play it a little bit. And it was very unique, but also nostalgic for me at the same time because it reminded me a lot of the Flash games that I used to play back in the day, but obviously modernized and,
Yeah,
got that flair to it. And it's intriguing you said that basically your daughter's the one that basically came up with a lot of the concepts because I feel like that is either a structure or I guess a mindset that a lot of people don't have is like most of the basically the fan bases and stuff are gonna be these kids anyway, and the
yeah,
ones that are coming up, they know what's cool, they know what is what. They gon' they are the ones that are, the tastemakers for it. So
yeah.
that is a very unique sort of aspect, and it kind of I'm pretty sure that probably blended in from obviously you being at PlayStation too, knowing that okay, there's a way to look at it, there's another way to look at it. How can we mesh these sort of ideas? And then the community aspect, I didn't realize like, obviously now everything is multiplayer and sort of
Mhm.
battle, but like I'm just now getting there. Like I was always a single player, like that, like I've always been a PlayStation Sony guy because like that's who had the narrative
Yeah,
games and
yeah,
the single players thing. So like that was sort of my thing. And obviously, I always played Call of Duty and the Maddens and stuff like that. But I was always about the narrative, the adventure sort of stuff. And so, it's kind of interesting now that the way that gaming is going and everybody's sort of connected now. You can't even play a game without being on connected to everybody
Online.
else. So yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of one of those things where you have to kind of bite the bullet. There's different elements to it that's very interesting. But I want to touch on too about you saying about not wanting to take so long on, the build time and stuff like that. So what goes into that as far as like, do you have to scale back more? Do you have to speed up different processes? Like how are you able
Mm.
to speed that up while also, obviously maintaining quality and stuff like that?
Yeah. So for me specifically, I'm not an artist. So I already knew going into the project that the art side of the polish was always going to be behind me as a programmer being able to just make the thing work.
Mhm.
And so once I had that understanding, I didn't even see that as a limiting factor. I was like, I can just tell people, and typically people are very understanding if the game doesn't look the best, it's still in development. But I wanted to make sure the systems felt good. Like
Mhm.
if I tell you that it's a multiplayer and there's matchmaking and there's progression, I want the player to see this is the progression, this is the battle pass. And so I really got very detailed with myself on what was realistic timeline wise, and then what was the MVP, like the minimum viable product. And that was like my project manager brain kicking in. I'm like, how
Yeah.
fast do you get to the MVP of this thing? And so, yeah, so that went into it. And the structure of the game overall also allowed that to happen because I'm not like I didn't go to school for game programming. I'm sure if like an actual game programmer looked at my code, he would like throw up instantly. But a lot of the systems that I built in are very easy to just continue to expand out. So I wasn't redoing the wheel every time I wanted to add in a new character
Mhm.
spells or like a new enchantment, which is like our deck builder aspect to the game, or a new power up or a new pickup. I could just write the code and then the
Mhm.
thing existed in the game. And so with all of that, we were able to, very quickly, get to that 3 month first play test. We have monthly play tests now, and like every monthly play test, I try to introduce at least one or two new things for people to test with as well. But yeah, it's overall, I was able to do it just because of the structure of the game. Like the game is very, very fluid. It's very
Mhm.
expandable. Like you can just inject things. And if things don't work, I made it in such a way that like I can just comment things out and it doesn't break anything because everything is just it's almost like when you start the game pulls in all the information from start instead of those things being hard coded into the game, which
Gotcha.
allows us to be very flexible.
Yeah, which also I believe actually he was discussing with me about that, like sort of how it is pulled in like that.
Mm.
So what went into was that like from the beginning? Like, is that like I'm assuming that's probably not all the way normal because most people probably want to hard code it and want things to sort of be sitting there. So like what went into that? I'm just intrigued by that part.
Yeah. So I've done almost every game that I've done. My friends will laugh. I have a friend of mine, Molly, who's probably laughing, but I'm always trying to do multiplayer, like whether it's true multiplayer, like team versus team, 1v1, or like a multiplayer aspect, like leaderboards or something like that. So I have a
Mhm.
pretty good understanding of how to program multiplayer aspects of games so that I was able to do that quickly. But from the beginning, because I knew the game was going to continue to evolve and grow, and we were just kind of testing the waters, at first I didn't think I was going to be working on this game for a full year. I thought it was going to be a cool 6 month thing that I do with my daughter and then like on to the next one. And so I didn't make anything hard coded because I was like, the fireball spell doing 50 damage might be too much. And also this fireball spell might be too generic for the fire character. Like I don't want people to play and be like, oh, of course he has fireball. So I think going in with that mindset that like everything is almost like everything is imaginary until it's not. I was just like,
Mhm.
okay, don't hard code anything. Make everything its own method. It's like very object oriented programming. So like if
Mhm.
the object doesn't exist, the game just doesn't even recognize that the thing is there.
Mhm.
Um, case in point, when we first made the game, I had this whole almost like pseudo survival aspect. Like you had to manage like of course health, but you also had mana and ether, which was like those sources that you use to cast your spells.
Mhm.
And you had to collect things on the map that would then give you buckets into those banks. And it was like this whole other system that took away from it being like a fast-paced arena brawler and got a lot of feedback early on that like that would feel good if this was more of like a MOBA style game or a slower
Yeah.
pace game. Like, of course, you want to have like those health reserves. They're like, but we just want to cast spells. And so I was like, okay, give me 1 second. went into the engine and just like unchecked those boxes and then made a new build during the same play test and put it back out. And I was like, okay, those things don't exist. And they were like, how did you do that
Yeah,
fast?
that's convenient. Yeah, that is
Yeah,
super
it's
convenient.
super
Yeah.
convenient. So we had a tournament after MDev, and like we had one character that was bugging out. One of their spells weren't working correctly, and I just went in and just like toggled that spell off, or one of the effects of that spell off, and did a new build. And like in between rounds of the tournament, I was like, okay, the character's not bugged, and they were like, how? Like
Yeah.
what? And I was like, you
Yeah.
just turn it off. Like you just turn it off.
Yeah,
Everything is like
that's
its own Lego bricks.
yeah, that's wild right there. That's pretty dope right there.
I appreciate
So
it.
so you said you haven't really been in the development side very long. How easy or difficult or however you want to call that, like would you say like learning that stuff just like for somebody that like sees this and like,
Mhm.
oh, I want to sort of emulate that. Like what would you what kind of advice would you give them? What sort of timeline does that look like,
Oh,
realistically, you know what I'm saying? Cuz people might hear that and be like, "Oh, that means I can do it fast." And it's probably not the case.
yeah. So it would depend on a few things. One, I would say be specific on what you want to learn. Like I knew I wanted to make multiplayer games, so I invested all of my time into multiplayer games. It's specific multiplayer shooter slash fighting games. If you were to sit here and ask me to make a like a crafting survival game, probably couldn't help you. It would take a while for me to gear up on that.
Yeah.
Um, so I would tell anyone, like, be specific. Like, if you just want to say, "Oh, I want to be a game programmer," first, from definitely from me working at Bungie and Sony, like, even if you got that role, it's going to be like, okay, you're a gameplay programmer, but do you do weapons? Do you do enemies? Do you do VFX? Do you do like loot and gear? Do you do pickups? Like, there's so many things that go into it. Like, that's why these games are complex. So I would say really think about what you want to do and then invest that time into that bucket specifically. And to your second point, it does take time. Depending on how much time you have to offer it, it's going to equal how much time it takes. Like I was lucky enough to be able to go through like a game design boot camp before I got the job at Bungie. So that was like a 6 month accelerator program where they taught you a bunch of stuff quickly. But that also was, 4 hours of my day, 3 times a week, sitting in this class going through that. Not everybody is going to have that time. So ultimately be patient with yourself and like enjoy those quick wins. Enjoy the fact that the first time you opened the Unity editor, you didn't even know what any of these tabs and widgets were. And now you can make a ball roll down a hill, and then you make your first little capsule character controller that moves around with the mouse and keyboard. Because those things are how every game starts. Like no
Yeah.
game starts off with the main character already swinging his axe, Kratos already having all of his
Right.
abilities. Like they all start with like this basic thing, just trying to move, and then it gets bigger and bigger from there. And case in point, we've been waiting on GTA 6 for how long?
Yeah.
Even if like
Okay.
the people you look up as experts are taking years and years and years to develop a game after they already know how to do the thing, like give yourself some grace when you're first learning how to build it.
I mean, to be fair, they're about to put out some real life.
Yeah, I mean
I mean, to
GTA
be
6 is gonna
fair,
be great.
fair, they about to put out something we ain't never seen before. So I mean,
Yeah,
like, to be fair, but I mean, definitely, because I mean, people these days think you can just look up YouTube videos and think all of a sudden you know how to do this stuff, and
yeah.
that's obviously not the case. But as far as let me touch on like this side of it, like, so obviously, like people like hear, oh, you work for PlayStation. Oh, that's I mean, that's just cool in itself. I mean, that's what's up. What is you talked about your day to day a little bit, but like, what is it like? Like it's a big company. Everybody knows it. There's a reputation, I'm pretty sure the bar is sky high every day, all that type of stuff. So like what is it just like day to day for you? Like having that job, being sort of around those people, those bumping elbows with the importance as it were. Like what is all that so like?
So for me specifically, it's a little different because I'm on more of like IT infrastructure stuff. So I'm
Mhm.
looking at a lot of like data and spreadsheets. But the overall feeling at Sony, from what I can say, it is still very much like you see the people and you're aware of the stuff going on. And it just feels like you're in this like massive creative bubble of like all the things that you had questions about, like you get reassured because like I was saying before, Rockstar is asking the same questions, like how can we
Yeah.
make this character inventory new and impressive? But at the same time, you do get like the fanboy aspect of like, oh my gosh, like you get a first glimpse of this or a first look at that, or you're in a meeting where they're talking about different projects and you get really excited. So overall, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's a dream. Like
Mhm.
for someone who grew up, I remember the Christmas where I got the PS1, like the
Yeah.
remodeled one, and I was like
Mhm.
screaming to now working for that company. Like it is like something I don't take for granted at all, but it still feels the same as if you were making games with your friends. Like that sense of we we cracked this bug or we found this bug that was like bothering us and we solved it or we found this new way of doing this or I jumped on a call with so and so and we talked about this thing and now we're going to make this like whole new project. Like
Mhm.
I think people would be very surprised of like the endorphin hits that you get from like making games with friends or doing game jams is the same as working in these environments. It just happens to be your job instead of
Yeah.
something that you do over the weekend.
Yeah. That's dope. And what's sort of like next for you? I mean, obviously you got Coven that you're working on, but you also said that, you kind of don't want to spend forever working on certain games and stuff. Obviously, you got PlayStation. What ideas are kicking around that you kind of want to do? Like, you got anything that you just, I gotta do that sort of thing? Like, what's like on the horizon for you?
So I've been thinking for a while, because I get asked to do, podcasts like this one or just general talks. I do like mentoring when I have the time through like game heads and other programs. So I think at some point I do want to set aside time to like really carve out time in my life to say like, hey, instead of this being an on again, off again, like I want to be a dedicated mentor or instructor to some sort of like early career or career switch program that helps people learn about game design and game development overall. Especially because I keep getting looped into those conversations. Like I must be good at it a little bit in order for me to keep
Yeah.
getting called into those. So I definitely want to dedicate time to that. And then really getting back to kind of what my overall mantra has been with game design, which has been like those 48-hour projects. So prior to Coven, most of my games that I made were typically like I would make them in a week or 48 hours because that gives you a very small timeline, which doesn't allow you to kind of make these expansive games,
Mhm.
but still force yourself to do the thing. So like me and my daughter made like a coffee delivery simulator where you're like delivering coffee in an office space. We did that in a weekend and it was just like, how many coffees can you deliver? Here's the high score and it was like a global leaderboard. So you could say like I'm the number one across the
Yeah.
world in this game. Me and my friend Molly, we made a like an endless runner that was also part extraction shooter. So think about Temple Run. But
Mhm.
then as you're collecting different things, you're trying to like get them out to your village to help rebuild the village. We did that in about 3 or 4 days. So I'm not saying I don't want Coven to die because I love that project and it's been
Yeah.
a great like father-daughter moment. And also, I'm having people help me with it from the art side. And I think it's a great opportunity for them. But I'm definitely looking forward to making like small, quick projects that I can just like, hey, like I like the climbing system in Assassin's Creed. Let me see if I can make a climbing game similar to
Yeah.
that and like
Okay.
just knock it out quick.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty interesting. We need more games like that because you said a coffee delivery sim. I love sim games. But if there's anything like as far as like you want people to find you, reach out, see the things that you're doing, kind of let people know how they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm like an old man at heart, so that's the best way to get a hold of me. If you're interested in Coven, we are on Steam. We have a demo available now under Coven All Powerful. Early access for the actual game should be June of 2026, but you can wish list it now. We also have a Kickstarter that we're working on to give like people who want to early contribute to the development of the game long term. We have like some goodies. So I don't know if you can see it back there, but we
Mhm.
have like crocheted versions of our characters and some props from our game that we're going to be building into a Kickstarter campaign for people. And then our Discord communities, which you can find through the game as well. Just covering all powerful on Discord if you want to stay up to date on like the game development. Like I said, we have monthly playtests. So if you ever want to jump into the game, it's live on Steam, but we also do monthly playtests to get groups together. But yeah, always open to chat. Love meeting new people. Love chatting about, hey, I want to make this game, but what do you think? If you want feedback, and yeah, just in general, just love to stay connected.
Cool. Yeah, and I mean that's a good shout too because a lot of the people who ask me about gaming or trying to get into gaming or just say they want to apply for the job at PlayStation and stuff, and they don't know that black people have these jobs.
Yeah, absolutely agree.